Cool. Okay, so very good evening to all. We are interacting. We're from Havarato Design Studio BRDS, interacting with Mr. Siddharth here. He is All India rank number 1 at the UCEED. This is undergraduate common entrance exam for design conducted by the IIT-Bombay. So, Siddharth, thank you very much for coming here this evening. Want to begin with asking you to tell us more about yourself, about how your rank at UCEED and everything, and yeah, just introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me over. So, of course, as ma'am did just say, I am Siddharth Camarushy, and I did somehow manage an AIR1 in UCEED exam. So, a little bit about me is that I am currently in 12th. I'm preparing for my board exams in a few months. And at the same time, I am also preparing for other design exams. So my main aim in my future is to apply for transportation design, which is my passion at this point. And I think that through UCEED I can get into IDC, IIT Bombay, which has the course of industrial design. So that will take me one step closer to my goal at this point.
That's wonderful. And how would you describe your experience about the UCEED entrance exam 2021?
So overall, the exam was 240 marks of general aptitude, mental aptitude, mathematical aptitude, and it was 60 marks of drawing. So the first 240 marks were actually, they were basically questions that were made to trick you. They were not hard questions, and they were not questions that would that wouldn't be solvable if you didn't know basic math. But the level was pretty good. They were tricky questions, and you have to really remain alert during the paper. That's the main thing while writing those questions. And the drawing question was actually pretty good. They really do test your speed and your ability to visualize different situations. So that was the most important thing at the time.
Wow. Okay. And so, because we will be, this is an interaction with the topper, right? So,
Yeah.
according to you, because also you've got this All India rank 1 at the UC, what are the three main key factors that prove most important for you for this design entrance exam preparations, like throughout the year if you've been preparing? And what do you think helped you the most in achieving this great result?
So, of course, the first thing was to actually, this might be a bit odd, this might sound a bit odd to some people, but the first thing is really to focus on your school studies because that forms the basis of the concepts that you're actually going to be using in this exam, mainly math, as well as a bit of science as well. So, it's not science that's really going to confuse you, that's going to test your knowledge of rectifying books. But what it essentially is basic knowledge. So that was actually the first factor, just focusing and learning to focus with through school studies as well. The second factor for me was solving a lot of aptitude questions. So specifically material from BRDS did help me. I got, I think, about 4 or 5 books related just to mathematical aptitude and general aptitude, verbal reasoning, or puzzle solving, and so on. So those questions I think amounted to at least 1,000 questions in total,
Yeah.
and yeah, and they really helped me. They really helped me condition my mind to the sort of questions that they could ask in UCEED and all of these other design exams. And the third most important factor was to solve papers from past years and mock test papers as well. So papers from past years, they are, I think, best solved a week or two before the exam, not from the start itself, as is the case for any other exam, in fact. But yeah, they are best solved a week or two before the exam simply because they again help you condition your mind to exactly the sort of questions that will come in that particular exam. Because a lot of design exams have different sort of questions, different sort of aptitude. So you see it as more mathematical aptitude and mental aptitude, whereas some exams like NID, National Institute of Design, Those are more towards general aptitude, and they test your common knowledge. So, are you up to date with all the happenings around the world, and do you know who was awarded recently, etc., etc. So that's really the third factor: mock test papers as well as sample papers. And mock test papers are, of course, pretty important because those questions have never come in the exam, and there's a very slight chance that they might actually come in the exam. Funnily enough, one of the questions from the BRDS mock papers did, in fact, come in the UCEED exam. Not the exact same question, but something that was really based on the same concept.
Oh wow. Oh wow. And so then I want to catch you on this area where you said that mock test papers. No, you said something about maths. That the
Yeah.
UCEED mathematics and the NID mathematics is pretty different. Now, a lot of students, when we are counseling or interacting with students, UCEED appearing students are generally from science backgrounds. If
Hmm.
somebody is willing to write NID, they're pretty scared. They think that UCEED mathematics is a very tough one. So,
Hmm.
what do you have to say to them, and how will you motivate those kids about it?
To be honest, actually, even I was pretty nervous about the math in UCEED, despite actually having spent a year and a half also preparing for IIT at the same time. So, but to be honest, the math level is very, very easy. I mean, even if you know basic addition, subtraction, and division, you can solve the paper and solve most of the mathematical aptitude questions. I think there may be one or two questions which if you know mathematical concepts of like 12th grade will help, but you can even solve them just through common sense. It's just that applying a mathematical formula makes it easier. That's the only thing. So it's only one or two questions that do. And more than actually worrying about knowing how to calculate and do mental maths, you should focus more on the ability to actually be alert during the exam. Because as I said before, the questions are tricky, but they're not hard to solve at all. That's the main thing.
Alright. Makes sense. And so then, what are your insights? Because there were three sections to the 240 mark part.
Yeah.
What are your insights on all these sections, and how can a student best prepare when they're preparing? How do you go about it?
So of course we'll just go over the sections first. I think there was the first section, which is numerical aptitude. The second section was multiple select choice, which is more than one correct, and the third section was multiple choice questions. That's just one correct answer. So to be honest, I didn't really follow any order as such while I was doing the paper. I just whatever order the questions came in, I solved it in that order itself. I didn't skip sections at all. So first of all, let's just discuss about the numerical aptitude type section. So this is the section where you really should dedicate a good amount of time to each question. About 4 or 5 minutes is the max you should dedicate to questions, but ideally 2 to 3 minutes is good for each question. Again, numerical aptitude might sound a bit intimidating because especially in UCEED, they have the answers which are considerable in decimal points as well. So for example, an answer to a question could be 6.28 or something like that. So it may appear intimidating, but it's really simple. You just have to, whatever calculations you do, be it addition or subtraction, multiplication, division, just ensure that whatever you're doing, you double check your calculations while you're doing it itself. And make sure that you don't spend too much time on one question, because if you do, in fact, spend too much time on one question, you tend to mess up the other questions. And yeah, that's mainly all you need to know for numerical aptitude, because they don't ask any specific type of question. It could be a question that's based on observation, like they could give you a set of leaves and tell you to identify which one is how many of these leaves don't belong to this set. And or it could be a mathematical based question, something like permutation and combination, just simple ones like if you roll a die, then what is the possibility of what is the number of possibilities of getting this, or something like that. So it's just simple questions like that when it comes to mathematical aptitude. Then in the multiple select questions, so multiple select questions are actually my weaker point in the exam, but they also need to be answered with care. So in multiple select questions, they might ask you some questions that are related to general knowledge as well. But honestly speaking, I wouldn't mark such questions simply because they have negative marking in multiple select type questions. It's not much. I think it's only minus 0.18 or so,
Yeah.
but other than that, it has a good risk factor, as in if you are if you're confident enough that the rest of your paper can go well, then it's advisable to mark those questions as well. I think out of the I'm not sure, I remember how many questions there were, but I think there were probably around okay, I'm not sure how many, I'm not entirely sure how many questions there were, but I guess there were 18 or 19 questions in multiple select choice. So I attempted almost 16 of them despite the negative marking. And again, some questions are simple enough to solve. You can get over the question in half a minute or so, but others are a bit longer. And again, don't spend too much time on any question. Come back to that question. So that's how we save time, and you'll get time in the end to cross check your answers. I know it's only 2.5 hours for almost what I think. There's quite a lot of questions.
To
Uh, yeah,
solve all of them, yeah.
yeah. So 2.5 hours, just 2.5 hours for all those questions may seem a bit intimidating, but if you can manage your time well, then you should have at least 15 to 20 minutes left in the end. Uh, even 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 though I actually double check the numerical answer type questions right after solving that section, which you should not do ideally, but you can if you're confident that you can finish the other two sections quickly. Then I even after doing that, I still had about 10 to 15 minutes left to recheck all my answers. So it's not too hard to finish within the time limit. But again, just start the paper quickly and keep on writing it with a fast pace. That's the main thing. But yeah, so multiple select choice questions, they have a good risk factor. So definitely go for them if you're confident. If you're like at least 90% or 80% sure that your answer is right, then you could go for them. It's not you're not losing too many marks in negative at least. You may lose 4 marks that you could get, but then it's better than the multiple choice question section. So that's what I'm going to get to right now. This is actually the most scoring section. It was my strongest section of all three sections in the first 2.5 hours. And the main reason it was actually my strongest section is because of the fact that you don't have more than one correct answer in the options. So for those questions that I felt were difficult during the paper, I could simply eliminate options, and there were many common sense and factual based questions. So there was, I'll just give an example. There was a question that was based on the logo of Amul, and then there were some questions that were based on how would a certain typograph reflect in a curved mirror. So that was a question that you could simply answer like that. And there were other questions such as one related to a shadow, which I had to eliminate options. So that's why this section is comparatively easier to solve. You can give least time to this section. So there are about 32 questions in this section, each of 3 marks. And I think the maximum time you should give to these questions is about 30 to 45 minutes, because they're all solvable within half a minute. Some may take a bit longer, but they generally don't, based on my experience.
Like, that's perfect. That's a great insight. And so then let's ask you, how will you grade this level of questions on scale of 1 to 10 in all this 240 the theory portion? How will you rate them? Because this rating will sort of help and um, the students to know, how should they, how much should they be serious, or also not very serious, or at least not be scared about it. So,
Yeah, so I think I would rate most questions. I think it would be fair to say that they are a fair 6 out of 10 at least. So they're not really easy. Like I would say easy is 1 to 3 or 1 to 4. And even among moderate questions, they are a bit to the higher side, mainly because they're all tricky questions. That's all. So um, being alert is most important in the exam. That's the main thing. So to be alert, you can follow any technique you want. You can maybe have a good night's sleep before the exam, or you can just use any other concentration techniques you have. But that's what matters really.
That's wonderful. And then I would also ask materials because you signed up for the BRDS study material and have
Yeah.
been, you used it for, uh, I think, 5 months. You were able to use it for
Yeah.
a good period of time. So just if you can tell how it was helpful and what was your ideal day looking like, how you
Hmm.
using the books and how you study.
Yeah. So, first of all, the main thing about the BRDS material was the number of questions. That was most important to me. And so the books I got, they consisted of theory as well as questions. So first, I made one round over the books of theory. Uh, they were pretty simple, and I didn't solve any of the questions at that time. I just simply read through all of the color theory, the theory related to principles of art, and that gave me a good idea at the time. And then after that, I left those books to the side, and I caught hold of the books that would require solving. So I'd have to put a pen down on paper for those questions. So the number of questions, as I said, was quite a lot. um, I think, ideally speaking, even if you just sit for maybe 1 hour a day, or if you could sit for 2 hours every alternate day, uh, it should be more than enough to be able to solve every single question properly, and to also ensure that you're ready for all the sort of questions that do in fact come in in the exam. That's the main thing. So I started solving these. I got these books in July, by the way, end of July, start of August, and I started solving them mid September after I was done with one round of the theory books. So they were good. I was able to complete. I was able to complete one book of roughly around 200 or 300 questions. That was the average of each book. So one book of roughly around 200 or 300 questions within 3 or 4 days, just sitting maybe 1.5 hour each day, and while simultaneously, of course, preparing for my 12th grade studies. And by December, I was done with all of them. I think there were about 15 or 16 books. So I was done with all of them pretty easily, even though I was solving them at a pretty relaxed pace. Um,
Yeah, that's how
that
it's
was,
supposed to be.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So other than that, after that, throughout December, I sat with the theory books, which were related to color theory and the other principles of art, theories of art. Uh, those that were also related to uh, art forms of the past, art history, all those. So I did those. That lasted around until June. All of those, the practicing all of those questions, and that was good. It gave me a pretty wide-ranging idea of what I lacked in sketching and painting, and it gave me a good idea of what I was already strong at. So again, as speed mattered the most, I used to keep a little timer with me, just to see how quickly I could finish each of the drawings and whether or not the drawing was to my satisfaction. And especially when it came to human figures and animal figures, I was pretty weak at the start. No one would really imagine that I was a good artist if they look at my human figures and animal figures. But the practice was very good from the books, so it gave me a lot to learn. But that was very good about books.
It's sort of.
And then towards January, so we had the exam on 17th of January, and I started solving the first set of sample papers around 5th or 6th Jan. So I did about Yeah, I did about 6 to 7 sample papers, which not sample papers actually. These were past papers. So I did 6 or 7 of them, and I was getting a pretty good result. I was confident that okay, I am at a good level at this point. So after this is just nothing but how not to lose marks in the exam instead of focusing on how to get marks. So while solving, obviously, I noticed that I was still struggling a bit with silly mistakes and that sort of stuff. So cutting down on those really helped me. And solving the mock papers also was very good. We had about 12 mock papers in the books. And although I was only able to solve about 6 before the exam day, um, I was lucky that one of those questions in the paper actually came from those 5 or 6 papers. That really helped me condition my mind, especially towards the sort of questions that I can expect in the exam. So that was great about them.
Oh, we are so glad. We're very glad about it. And you also scored a whooping 57.5 in the drawing section, yeah, the 60 mark
Yeah.
question. Because last year, Ironman was also our UC All India rank last year, but also because every year this number of marks that they're giving in all the section is different. He scored, I think, somewhere around 47 or something like that. This was
Okay.
10 marks more. So
Yeah.
we were so amazed, so good to know. Very well done.
Yeah. Thank you.
And so yes, we spoke about the theory part a lot, and about if somebody is nervous about preparation for GAT and want to tell them how can they cover different topics, because of course in numerical answer type questions, as we said, some questions can be just about counting something, some questions can be about solving problems and everything, and it's
Yeah.
more about what did you say? Um, techniques, yeah. But
Yeah.
were the books that you got, were you using any other material, or were they enough for you to give a practice of all these various types of questions that can be asked? Was that also?
So regarding the books, I think the books such as verbal reasoning and puzzle solving were all common sense based. So there's really nothing, no formulas or anything or any teaching that you really need for those questions. So anyone should be able to solve that. But there were actually maybe 1 or 2 topics. I've never seen a question in UCEED from these topics, but they were still in the aptitude books, such as calendar and clock, which require you to have solved these questions before. That's the main thing. So I actually had the good luck that I did also prepare for these sort of questions when I was in 10th grade, because I had given NTSC at the time, and for those exams also we had prepared for these specific mental ability topics, and they helped me to grasp the concept quickly. But to be honest, I mean, these are easy concepts. If you have a good teacher, then it's very simple to grasp them. So, if you can find a good teacher on YouTube, or if you go to any coaching institute and you have a sir over there or a ma'am over there for mental ability, then they'll be able to explain it to you very well. And again, as I said, even if you don't, YouTube is your best source of knowledge these days. So that really helped me. And in general, the BRDS books do have an introduction to the theory, so there's nothing to worry about that. I don't know how to solve these questions, so how am I going to do it in the exam? There's no worry factor over there.
And so then, according to you, for the design and drawing part, because GAT, as and when how we're practicing, similarly also for drawing. But how important, because this design and drawing related questions, we don't get to learn about it in the school.
Hmm.
School art classes are very different from what these
Yeah.
exams are all asking. So then, how important is it to understand these basic concepts about design and drawing? What do you have to say about that?
So, of course, if you have to make a drawing of any situation, and especially in UC, they generally will ask you to draw a certain place, like for instance, a classroom or a living room, as we did, in fact, get this year. So, you should know about the basic concepts of drawing a place mainly. So perspective is very important. Scale and proportion is very important. And they generally don't ask human figures, but I can't guarantee that because they've only been asking such drawing questions for the past 2 or 3 years. So they could make some surprise changes in the next year papers. But yeah, in general, I think what is most important is observation. So wherever you are, whenever you are just sitting around and you have nothing to focus on, if you just look around you, you can observe how symmetry works, you can observe how perspective works, how scale and proportion are very important when you're drawing. And all of this observation in the end will culminate in you being able to draw something uh, straight out of your head, right? That's very important. That's the most important thing because we only get 30 minutes and we have a pretty complex situation to draw. It does generally take about 3 to 4 minutes to figure out what we want to draw to make a small rough sketch of it. That's most important. So that's why you should also have the ability of rough sketching. So I think today is 5th of April, and the next UCEED attempt is going to be only in Jan, whatever the case is. So the main thing is to practice drawing every day. For anyone who feels that they're not good at drawing, the main thing is to practice consistently because you won't observe changes and you won't observe results in drawing practice within just a week or so. It's a pretty long process, but after a few months, when you look back at your first sketches, you'll realize the mistakes you were making back then, and you'll realize how much you have in fact progressed in the drawing part of the paper.
That is so true. That is so true. Yeah, practice makes a man perfect. Okay. And so then how were you preparing all your drawing related? Because you said books and all these very portions you started doing much later around September or
Yeah.
something. But how did you also from the beginning, how were you preparing for drawing and design and how did you practice your perspectives or all this?
So perspective drawing is I think, as I said, it's based upon observation. So whatever you draw, stand back and look at your drawing and see if it looks like you can walk into it, right? That's something I. It's a technique I use. I don't know how applicable it is to most other people, but it's a good technique for me because it helps me look back at my drawing and say, okay, if this does not look realistic, then find out where I am making mistakes and then rectify that. And you always learn something from something like that, from a situation like that. That's the most important thing. And in general, just draw what you observe around you is the best tip I can give people. Draw whatever you observe, as in, if you observe human figures when you go to a market, if you observe human figures when you go to a circus, not that we do these days, but yeah, but any situation you are in where you can see something interesting around you, make sure that even if you don't have anything to draw at that point of time, just observe them and try and recreate that scene in your head while you're at home, wherever you can draw, and try to redraw those scenes. It's called memory drawing. I think most people will know this. So memory drawing is important for many exams such as elementary and intermediate, and practicing those sort of questions will help you observe different things, because once you attempt to draw these things, you'll actually start to observe them more closely in real life. For instance, a human hand, you may be drawing them for the first time and you may feel that it's absolutely rubbish, but the next time you look at a human hand, you're going to wonder that, okay, so this is how these lines go, and this is how the thumb is in proportion to the other four fingers. So that is only going to improve your drawing skill and your observation capability. And that's the main thing, really, observation. That's what I've been going round and round about.
That's perfect. And so, okay, I will. Last question on my side would be that one is because you are in 12th, you were in 12th, or you are still in 12th.
I am still.
Preparing, you are in 12th, and we're preparing for the entrance exams simultaneously. And sometimes maximum major number of students, they also have science as their major background when preparing for
Yeah.
UCEED. And just in general, 12th in India, it's a lot of like a cooker pressure. And how do you have tips for any time management, or you want to talk about how time management would play an important role for all the students, and how regular practice, is going to be important? Or how did you can also at the end can share your day, like how
Yeah.
was your usual day?
Hmm. So, of course, I too have such a background. I am pursuing science at the same time, and I also get UC this year. So, really speaking, the main thing is to make good use of the time you do have in hand. Uh, when you're being taught in classes in school, I make sure that I pay most of my attention over there. And when I do, in fact, do that, I don't need to re-revise it after class, which means that I can directly get to solving those questions. And the time that I do, in fact, save doing that, I can use for preparing for these design exams. And I, in general, do have a passion for drawing. So even if I don't have to prepare for an exam, you can see a ton of sketches lying around here and there on my table. So that helped me prepare for design exams, and that actually was my motivation to try out all of these exams because my parents used to notice that all my textbooks were also full of drawings. I used to just sit and make them in school when we had free periods, or when the teacher wasn't teaching anything, or I was done with my work. So yeah, the main thing is really to focus on whatever is being taught in school, and to also not ignore the fact that you have to be aware, basically, that you're wasting time if you feel you're wasting time. And mainly, I think the most important thing for me was that if you are spending time online, try and ensure that it's a productive use of your time, even if you are online. So even if you're on something like Instagram or YouTube, try and make most of it productive. Maybe try and learn something. If you're interested about fashion design, or you're interested about cars, as I am interested about cars a lot. So I spend most of my time on social media researching a lot about these, and just in general looking at other people's sketches, how they sketch, and trying out new styles of sketching. That helps me a lot. So while it may not exactly be what these exams ask you, they in general will, of course, always develop your sketching abilities. And just simply I think paying attention to whatever is being taught, especially in math, will help a lot with mental aptitude, because all those calculations in school that we have to keep on running through our mind, all of those by hearting of formulas, actually really conditions our mind to be alert, and that really helped me in this exam. You see, it was a more mathematical based exam, and as a result, I was able to do well in this.
Maths is your strong part, is it?
Yeah, maths is, yeah, I do enjoy maths, especially mental maths. So anything that has logic to it, I always take it up as a challenge, and I love to solve those sort of questions.
I will run to the hills. Maths is crazy.
Yeah.
Very nice, Nitya. And so then tell me, last but not the least, how do you wish to change this world? You will go to the IIT. You, I think, have also written NID's exam. You
Yeah,
mentioned
I have written an IELTS exam. Yeah.
waiting for the results. IITs, however, because I remember speaking about this to your dad, that IIT in general do not have transportation design,
Yeah.
but irrespective of which college you will choose and go to, what do you wish to do at the college? And then how are you imagining your future 10 years down the line? And how do you make an impact in the industry? Because it's unlike engineering where you are 60 years old and you will make a model like a riverfront or make a metro. Design is very different, no? It's consistent.
Yeah.
It's every day creating. So
Yeah.
what are your dreams? Please share.
So, firstly, of course, I'll be discussing about what I what I intend to do in college. I think that most importantly, I want to. So even though I may not actually be, because I am someone who's looking into the technical side of design, simply because I like transportation design and industrial design is something that will take me there. So my field is a bit more technical than, let's say, fashion. Or fashion may also be technical. I have no idea, but of course, fashion may also be technical. There's nothing
And
surprising about
when you
that.
make let's say leather seats or cheetah print seats in the car, it becomes fashion plus transport and product and everything together. So it's pretty
Yeah.
complicated. But yeah, yeah, go
Yeah,
on.
that is true. Actually, design is a pretty versatile field. I mean,
Mm.
if you take product or industrial design, you can design anything from aeroplanes and jets to tiles on bathroom floors. So it really is that versatile. And most big designers, they have a they have a very wide range of work in their portfolio. So um, even transportation designers. I know a few that did designs for Coca-Cola for their Coke bottles and also designs for companies like Lamborghini and Ferrari. So that's a pretty interesting thing about the creative industry. But in general, in college life, I want to keep in touch with the engineering side of whatever I want to pursue. So if I am going for cars, I will always try and learn in my free time as a hobby about the actual working because curiosity comes naturally, and if you're curious about something, then you're very interested to search it up on the internet and read about it. Yeah. So cars and the something I'm always curious about and I'm always interested in. So even if I do in fact take up design and the creative bit of the work like sketching, I don't want to lose touch with the fact that technicalities are very important, and I can't simply let design lead me.
They will give you so much to do.
Yeah, exactly. So function and form both are important. Neither is more important. So that's basically my aim for college life. I want to make the most of it because I do realize that a lot of people in India don't get this sort of an opportunity to pursue design. I mean, I know a few friends of mine who unfortunately cannot pursue design, although they are actually brilliant at art. They have very quick minds. They have the abilities. I know a few people who are unable to do that. So I realized that I should be grateful for this opportunity I'm getting, and I want to ensure that doesn't matter what I end up doing in the future. I'm happy and I'm able to convince people that it's best to follow what you dream about, not what is going to give you more money. I want to make that sort of a positive impact in the industry. I just want to, I mean, without any disrespect to engineers in India, I do think that engineers, doctors, the general professions, I do think that it's a bit of an oversaturated industry in India. Um,
Nothing.
most,
I think this country, they will not produce any other engineer, doctor for 10 years. Nothing's gonna do. I think we're
yeah,
totally fine as it
yeah. So it is a bit of an oversaturated industry, but then I just want to make sure that people also are aware that the creative industry is an industry that's actually going to make our future, despite a lot of people still saying that engineering is the future and all this data and all that will make our futures bright. So, despite all of that, most people still need to be reminded on a timely basis that every single thing they use in life is a product of design.
that's correct.
So, that's something that I will always strive to make people aware of.
Wonderful. That sounds wonderful. Great. Perfect. And yeah, I still want to share your like scorecard. Just not scorecard. It has nothing to do because we recently got a parent who was asking, "Oh, you should tell me how much the rankers are scoring so that they can
Mm.
go home and tell the child that you have to score that much in order to get the rank or whatever." But also because it's changing. Like how I said, last year all India ranked one in his drawing was 40,
Yeah.
47, and 10 marks more, and is complete. The ranks are still the same. The marks
Yeah.
are still the but you scored very wonderfully. I'm very proud of it. I'm very glad that the material that BRDS made and was able to share it with you was so helpful. And I think you also did it very nicely. For all the distance learning students, that is what we want to tell them, that they should go through all the modules and then solve the papers at the end, like closer to the exams. So
Hmm.
beautifully over there. And I think over to you. You want to make the sketch for the drawing. I'm not very sure about the question. Do you have the question also?
Yeah, I do have the question. So I think UCEED as the authorities who are conducting UCEED, they've done a pretty good thing of actually putting these question papers online for reference. That's good. Anyone can download them from the website. So that's pretty easy to get past papers. And before I actually jump into making a sketch, just as to what I did in the exam, before I do that, I just want to highlight one thing. When I went into that examination hall, the only thing that was going on in my mind was that every single person in this room is either as smart as me or smarter than me. So what do you do in such a situation is that you will try to be uh, the most alert self possible, because that's the only way you can score more, or you can basically stand out,
Mm.
especially in the general aptitude questions. And just don't take too much tension. I mean, marks keep on changing over the years. I remember seeing these reports that the toppers from past years were in the 180s and some were in the 240s and so on. So there's really nothing. There's really no tension about marks. All you should ensure is that you give your best attempt.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, wonderful. I think, yeah, all the students who will listen to this will be very motivated. Just for me, because yeah, they should just take it not as a very grave exam,
Yeah.
or just go for it and do what you have to do, and it will be fine.
Yeah, that's the thing about design exams. You don't really need to be the sort of person who sits with books all day.
Oh,
You just need to be you just need to be aware of what's happening around you. And to be honest, they're pretty simple. And even if people are not able to crack these exams, or whatever is their definition of crack, even if people really can't do their best in these exams, then there's always a lot of other exams that they can give. And there's so much scope in design. And it's not like IDC and IIT-Bombay and NID and Hyderabad are the only good design institutes that people should always strive to aim for. There's so many more coming up. There's UID in Ahmedabad, there's MIT in Pune, there's Pearl Institute, and so on. So on. I can keep on going for them.
definitely, definitely. Yeah, no, sure. Yeah, not as bad as engineering. But
Yeah.
not many schools, but good schools, and
Yeah, good schools are definitely in abundance. There's no doubt.
I so yeah, I'm very content with all the talking, and
Yeah.
can't think of anything that I missed out by asking. But yeah, I also got the question paper.
Yeah.
Should I share it or how?
So I do actually have the question. I
Yeah.
can, yeah, I can even read it out if that's not a problem. But before we again jump into that, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting this again. But in case anyone has any queries that uh, they want to ask me, just in general, they want to get in touch with me. They feel that I was not able to cover something. They can always reach out to me on any platform like Instagram or Facebook. You can just type in Siddharth Camarushy, in fact, because I think I have that odd, very weird distinction of being the only Siddharth Camarushy in the world. So
And
yeah, I just use that to my advantage like that.
oh, but yeah, you should talk about your YouTube channel also. Take a minute to talk about it. Take a minute to talk about your Instagram page. You can leave your handle when you are putting that on. You have a paper, right?
Yeah,
You can put on that your handle so that
yeah,
people have to follow you. They will, give a like. They will follow your YouTube, subscribe, whatever. You do that bit also, please. Yeah,
yeah.
because it's just sometimes when you are drawing something and I'm also drawing things that you will see in my drawing, I will not see in yours, and vice versa. No?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
definitely,
yeah.
and they have to follow some good coming up artists and everything. Then why not? Please.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good way for me to connect as well. I learn a lot from people who actually approach me instead of people who approach me learning a lot from me.
Yeah,
That's, that's
I remember sir was also saying that you post this international drawing competitions and drawing
uh,
competitions. So you
yeah, yeah. So
wow.
yeah, we were just we were actually experimenting with the idea of creating an international design challenge. So we just used social media, nothing but a month of promotions on Instagram. Me and one of my friends who, sorry, who studies in college. So we were just toying with the idea of it, and a few months of discussion later, it actually turned into something pretty real. We were able to get a lot of entries from many countries around the world. So that was pretty mind blowing. How a little bit of networking could help us do something of that sort. And in general, networking is just good for our skill, our observation. I mean, we learn a lot from the internet these days. So it was pretty amazing.
That is great. You will definitely want to also leave it on the chat box. You can leave your handle on the chat box also, and then can write over us so that we can
Yeah, yeah. So if you don't mind, should I write you right now?
this. I will.
Yeah. So just a moment.
Very well.
Okay, so I'm just gonna type in my handle. And yeah, I've just put in my links for, as in the account names for Instagram and YouTube, because that's the two platforms I use the most at this point. Yeah. So shall we jump into the drawing bit right now?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I will actually switch on my phone camera right now. And I will talk through this laptop I have over here. So my stand might actually get in the way.
Yes,
Don't
that's
let that bother you at all.
that.
Okay, so I think you can see it, right?
I yes. This is an
Okay, I think
exam.
it's clear enough. Is it clear for you?
Yeah, yeah.
Can you see I've made a little border around it?
Ah, yes, I can.
Yeah, okay, so that's that. That's good. I think that's a lost focus. Yeah, no, it's not lost focus. That's good. So the question I have right here with me was essentially that you are sitting in a well ventilated room, and it is 9 in the morning. Sunlight is streaming through the window on the east, casting shadows on the floor, and a cat is resting in one of the sunlit patches. A newspaper is placed beside a cup of hot tea on a small side table, and there are three freshly watered potted plants in the room, one on the floor and two on the windowsill with the watering jug next to it. So, first tip for anybody who comes across a question like this in the paper is that you must make well, because they give us they gave us a few extra sheets of paper. So the drawing booklet, the answer booklet is actually one drawing sheet and about one or two other rough papers. So you can make a little rectangle just this sort. It doesn't even have to be big, and you can just sort of idea around what you want to sketch, what you want to include in your sketch. And you can leave about 5 minutes for this. So you have to assume that you have to make and shade your sketch in a matter of 25 minutes, and that will help you with your time management. But this is the most important part for me because it helps me really determine what I'm going to do in the sketch and so I don't have to use the eraser too much. But just in general, it's still better to keep the eraser around because we can't really guarantee everything is going to go according to plan. So I will go a little slow on this one because I'm also talking while sketching. But yeah, I'll try to make it as fast as possible.
However, you are comfortable. However, do slow.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So first, I'm obviously going to start just by putting a little perspective point in the distance over there. That will just give me a pretty good idea of where I want to take everything, all of my lines. And you can basically make any sort of view of the room you want. You can, in fact, even make a corner like this. Uh, it's diagonal, but you get the idea, right? This is the ceiling, and this is the floor. This is your walls with the windows, etc. So you can even make something of that sort. Anyhow, whatever is comfortable for you. I'm just going to stick to a normal straight view of the room, looking at one of the walls, because during an exam, it's hard to sort of think of those ideas and come up with everything at the moment. So I'll just stick to a very simple perspective. So first of all is drawing the wall on the opposite end. And you can go over your lines again and again. When they ask, they have actually given a few criteria on which they would be judging, and they have a very well, very pretty well uh, elaborated on what sort of criteria they will be looking for in the drawing, and line quality is one of those criteria. But to be honest, line more than line quality is your visualization and your creativity in making a room. So that's what matters more. Even if your line quality is a bit shabby, don't mind, because anyway, it's pencil line quality. You can erase it later on when you're finally done with your sketch. So that's a really great thing about these sort of sketches.
And
And okay.
they put a specification, right, that the entire sketch has to be only out of pencil. And
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, that's another thing. They did specify that do not use color and do not use any other material or paints or etc. So it's pretty easy. You don't really have to worry about all of that stuff. Yeah. So, and they also, again, as I said, they elaborate on what sort of criteria they'll be looking at when they're judging your drawing. So, but what they actually don't mention, although they have written everything else, what they actually don't mention is that they'll also be looking for your observation power. So if they ask you to make a room, as they did in this year's question, they'll also look at your drawing and see if they can make out that this is a modern room, right? We're taught to make some we're actually at times taught to make pretty generic rooms, put a small window here and a few chairs over here, curtain rods and all that stuff. So instead of going for something generic, if you can go for something that looks like it belongs in a world where you're actually living in, then that will create a sense of them wanting to give you marks.
oh yeah.
So yeah, that's something I kept in mind while making the drawing. So I did of course start off with a window right over here because it is well ventilated and they have specified that there is sunlight coming in from the east. So I made a pretty big window because, as I was just saying, modern houses look much more airier with bigger windows. So I kept that one point in mind. There's one window over here, pretty large window, too large some might say, but yeah,
Ah,
and just make the depth of the window. Again, the perspective point is very important. You can see I'm dragging my pencil to that point all the time, but that's only because I need an accurate perspective. I can't leave all of my lines parallel. And I'm making a generic curtain, but not the sort of curtain you'd expect that hangs from a curtain rod, but the sort that is actually from one of those hidden curtain rods. And I'm going to add a bit of a breeze to the curtain simply because they have specified well ventilated in the question. So I'll just add a bit of curve to the curtain. And that's a rough shape of my curtain done. They have also specified flower pots, two of them on the windowsill, So I'm just going to make one that's half covered by the curtain. The little plate at the bottom of the flower pot. Of course, we can't keep them without plates, otherwise the water would just spill down. And then I'm going to make a small flower pot, and they've specified that there's a watering can next to them. So uh, I made a pretty generic watering can at the time, and I'm doing the same thing right now. Just not too much detail, but it's identifiable as a watering can. So that's pretty simple. And that's a rough sketch of the window done. Let's add some frills to the curtains so that you get to know that this is actually a curtain. I'll erase the windows marks. And that's basically one whole part of the drawing done, the curtains and the flowering pots. Then they have also specified that there's another flower pot kept on the ground right near the window. So I'm going to draw a bigger one because that's obviously the reason why it's kept on the floor and not on the windowsill. I tried to make it decorative instead of just having a general and very boring looking flower pot. So as you would keep in a house, just keeping in mind all the perspective and symmetry that is required for such objects. Because more than detail and line quality, they will look to find if your drawing is realistic enough looking. And we'll take care of the plans later on, after we're done with all of the rough details. So we have an empty wall over here, and they have also specified what else. Oh yeah, there's a cat resting in a sunlit patch, newspaper placed beside. Okay, fine, yeah. So I'm just gonna start making a very generic looking hall right here. So I chose the living room to go with instead of any other room. So I'm just gonna make a door over here leading to some other room. It's simple enough. Add a handle, a rudimentary handle of sorts, maybe a lock or something. And you can just use this as a reference to divide your space. Now, because I have gone with the living room of all rooms, I also had to add the sort of stuff you do, in fact, have in a living room, such as a television. So a television requires a TV table as well at times, even if it's wall mounted. Again, I'm using the perspective guide to make sure that the table looks 3D. I'm just going to divide this into 3 parts. So this middle part right here can be for keeping what you would call the decoders or the CD players or the set-top boxes or whatever. Gaming consoles, if I may. And just the other two sides can be drawers for other miscellaneous wires and that sort of stuff. Then, of course, most importantly, the TV. Because if I made a TV table, I can't make it without the TV. So a big enough TV to make it look like a modern house. There you go, that's stuck on the wall. I'll just add a bit of brand or detail to make sure that people know it's a TV and not just some sort of photo frame. And because we do, in fact, notice accessories around the TV when we go to other people's houses or in our own houses. So I'm just going to place something like a sound bar over here. So sound bar done, maybe some wall speakers over here. But all of these are actually just fills and details. It's not exactly necessary in the drawing. If you feel that you're being a bit too slow, then you can just skip the extra details. I generally add them in the end, but since I do have a luxury of a little bit of time, I am taking a bit more time than I would have in the exam. And I'm just going to add a clock over here because that seems to be a sensible place to add a clock. Now that we're done with this perspective, after we're done with the far wall, which is that one, I generally do not prefer to proceed with this wall because I know that there's supposed to be something over here as well. And if it's something 3D, like for instance, a sofa or another set of chairs, then it can actually overlap over here, which means I'll have to erase my lines again, and that's a waste of time. So I generally start with my rough sketches over here. So again, using this perspective point, it's gone somewhere over here. Using that perspective point, I'll just draw out my guides. So this one over here can be for something like a sofa set over here, similar thing I drawn in the exam, and a center table, maybe a carpet, and I want the cat to be resting on the carpet because cats they prefer to rest on the softer places. Yeah, so that's the sort of thing that you should just keep on going through your mind. Um, Generate things that you actually see in daily life uh, and not fix things. I'm just gonna specify 9 o'clock on the clock over there. So I will roughly sketch out the mat as well, the carpet that I'm planning to sketch. And then I will sketch out the sofa over here on the side. And since they actually have specified that you are sitting in a well ventilated room, I am also going to draw um, a body part to show that it's actually from the field of view of a human. So if I add these little lines over here, I can draw two armrests, something like this. My arms resting on them, my feet pointing in that direction. And that gives the person the impression that this is okay. This is through the eyes of somebody who's sitting in that room. And that brings about a bit of realism. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is make a rudimentary sketch of the sofa I want to do. So, again, I've run into a problem over here because I have to erase these lines that I've done for the TV table. As I said, I prefer to do these low bits quickly. So I'm just going to draw the sofa. There goes one handrest. There goes this bit. And let's say this is a sofa for seating 3 people. So another handrest on the other side. This. Okay. Erase the extra lines. Again, working on something like the backrest, the sofa, because of course, what's a sofa without a backrest? That is a pretty rough three-seater sofa done. Just gonna erase the extra lines that I don't need in that, so that I don't get confused while I'm making the shadows and the other stuff. I'll add a pillow. That is again add to preference sort of thing. So that's a very wrong pillow. I have taken the liberty to change a few things that I actually made in the exam that I felt I could have done better back then. But because of the fact that I didn't have the time, I obviously couldn't make the changes back then. But let's leave the pillows for later on. And then I can start working on this wall now that I'm done with this 3D object over here. So they have, is there anything specific they've asked for? No, nothing. Right. So there's nothing else specific that they asked for that would require a wall. So because they've said well ventilated, I'm also going to add another window on the west side for wind to actually flow from east to west. I'm going to do that. Or I can make this a balcony.
I think your phone is the video from your phone. Are you drawing?
Oh, man. Okay, I think what has essentially happened is that my phone seems to be overheating for some reason.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you want?
Okay, it's hanging a bit. Just give me a minute. I'm sorry.
Please, no, that's fine.
I should be reconnecting. Hmm. It's too much of a chapter. Remove of power. Okay, yeah, okay. It should join in a minute because of the fact that it was overheating. It turned off the mobile data and all of that stuff. So I'll just wait for it to start. Meanwhile,
You're
I am going a bit slow with the sketch because I have the luxury of time right now, and again, it's better to explain while I'm sketching instead of explaining the whole thing after I'm sketching.
no, this is
So yeah, that's one bit. Okay, while not connecting, just give it a minute. Okay, I'm going to join. So, I hope my audio has been clear until now, right? Because I generally use my earphones, but they seem to be not working for some reason today. But never mind.
no, you've been great. Perfect.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. You want to drink some water also, meanwhile, please do.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm fine. I'm fine. I
Please.
had quite a liquidy meal anyway before this, so no worries about that. Hmm. Oh, enjoying that. It doesn't generally overheat on a Zoom call, but I'm sort of confused as well. It's taking a while to connect.
Little pieces of technology, it is fine.
I hope you can cut this bit out.
Huh?
I hope you can cut this bit out.
Ah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm just joking. I mean, okay. I think it should show you a request that I'm waiting. Yeah. Hmm? Oh yeah, it's back. That's good to know. Yeah,
Okay.
it's back, right? You can see it. Okay, that's good to know. So as I said, I'm just gonna draw another source of being able to go out, like a window. This one can be a balcony, so that wind can actually go from east to west, as they have said, well ventilated. So that's what I'm gonna do. Ensure that this is a well ventilated room. Again, because this is a balcony, I'm gonna be drawing the ability to actually go out. So this is the window sill, and I'm gonna draw a slightly open window, just for the sake of showing that it is actually a sliding glass door. This is the other bit, other window. And that's the balcony done. To ensure that people actually understand that that is a balcony and not just some sort of sliding window, I'm also going to make some railings over there. So railings on the outside that effectively, so glass panes over here, make it look good. And of course, That can just give people an idea that is actually a balcony. I can add some spokes to it, the railing. So there's the balcony done. I can add a roof to the balcony. Again, all this is extra details. It's frills over the actual drawing. You don't really need to add all that much detail, but since I can, I am.
But I think we're also going on time. 30 minutes recapping, I think it will be done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, this drawing has pretty much gone well over 30 minutes now. But again, as I said, I'm speaking and I have the liberty of time, so I'm adding a lot of details. But yeah,
But
so I'm just going to draw a fan as well, just to ensure that it looks like a breezy room despite having a lot of stuff in it. So here's a fan. There's one plate of fan. Okay, it's not the most accurate fan, but it's good enough for this drawing.
yeah.
Again, just draw lights on top of the ceiling. Not the generic tube light, but a good looking light. The lights drawn. Now the only thing that's remaining is this center portion over here. Oh yeah, in fact we have an empty wall over here, right? So I'm just gonna add a photo frame over here. Just because most people don't leave empty walls in their homes, so I'm not gonna leave this one with empty walls either. So a photo frame with some sort of scenery in it. And below that, I am gonna draw a bookshelf. Just to fill this space and make it look like someone actually lives over here. That's another important thing because, like I said in the starting, it's very important for you to make the setting as if you can actually go and live over there without a problem. Here's some shelves for the books. Just gonna draw rudimentary lines to show those books. And that's the bookshelf done. We can add the detail in the leaves of the plant. So I'm just going to go for something like, and any plant, to be honest, you can draw any sort of leaves you want. Doesn't matter because this is not a biology exam. And that's a very generic looking plant. I'm just going to erase the bookshelf that I've drawn into it. So that's that. And even on the inside plants, you can just draw something, a very generic looking plant. Doesn't matter at all. Maybe add some longer branches. And that's it. So that's the flower pots detailing done. Again, a smaller plant over here. Simple and straightforward, nothing much. And now the center part is left. So I'm gonna start with drawing the impression that there's actually someone sitting over here. As I said, to give an impression that this is actually being seen from another human's perspective. So that's two armrests and just drawing two arms to show that my hands are on the armrests. I hope there's no disturbance right from my background.
Yeah, there is one.
Okay, that's good to know. Again, another arm. So again, it's not necessary to add as much detail as I did during the exam. But if you're confident that you can actually do it quickly, then it's always worth it because points are also awarded for your speed. And the more the detailing you do, the more the chance that you will get some marks for that. So again, I'm going to draw a simple center table like so. A round center table. as just to signify that fact that it has feet. And yeah, that's a pretty rudimentary center table done. Now, the other important part is drawing the cat, which is an animal figure, and which is something that most people are actually weak at. So I didn't even draw the cat facing towards me. I just drew the cat facing away from me because I knew for a fact that my animal figures are the strongest point. So that could, as a matter of fact, ruin my drawing. So before I drew the cat, they've specified that it is actually sitting in one of the sunlit patches. So first of all, I have to draw where the sunlight is coming from. It's obviously coming from here. So I just drew a rudimentary shadow to show the window's sunlight. And because it is 9 o'clock, I can allow the shadow to elongate a little bit. So this is again just a very rough drawing of the shadow's path. This is a sunlit patch, actually, not the shadow, but I think you can get that. A little bit of the window shadow over here. And yeah, that's approximately done. So this right here is my sunlit patch. And I'm just going to draw a cat, let's say, over here, sitting a bit far away, because I'm not, again, too confident in drawing it close enough. So the closer I draw, the more detail I'll have to add in the end. But because it's paw, it's resting, it's looking away from me. And this is the cat's tail.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's a very rudimentary cat over there. And this is the cat's shadow. So I think it's a relatively large cat that I've drawn. Gosh. But yeah, I think that gives the examiner an idea. Okay, there's a cat over there. It gives the viewer an idea. So now that we're done with the sketch, we're done with practically everything there is to do in the sketch. Uh, I don't think any more detailing is really necessary. I'll just draw the windowsills over here. I think I forgot to add those.
Newspaper which is placed beside the cup.
Oh yeah, oh my gosh. Thank God. Thank God I didn't forget this in the exam.
I was, yeah, would also be most ideal for yeah, most students to draw what is asked of. And
Hmm.
to a student.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think in the exam I did almost forget to draw something, but luckily I reread the question. So I was saved at that moment. But it's a cup of steaming hot tea, and it's kept along with newspaper. So you don't even have to draw the whole thing, the whole newspaper. I just drew a folded newspaper on this sort of a side table. Just wrote Times over here. So whoever sees it actually knows that okay, it's supposed to be a newspaper. A few lines of text and properly. And so there's a pretty rudimentary newspaper over there. And now that we're done with the whole sketch, I'll just start with the shading bit. So I'm just going to get my.
So then the evaluation criteria for this entire drawing is observation, imagination, selection and composition of objects, quality of line, presentation and attention to detail. No,
Yeah.
no wonder. Mm.
Yeah. So after we're done with all of this, doing it properly will take about maybe 15 minutes if you minus out all the extra detail that I might have added right now. But this is approximately exactly what I've done in the exam. And the sketch took me 15 minutes, uh, which by some people's standard would be quite a lot. But it's good enough for me because I know that my shading won't take too long. So it also depends upon the person who is making the sketch, if they're confident with the shading or the sketching. So if they feel that the shading will take quite a bit, they can make a simple sketch and shade properly well into it, or they can make a detailed sketch and they can add lighter shading into it. So the main bit of shading over here is to highlight the fact that there's light coming from the here. So obviously, because light is coming from here, this wall will be darker as compared to this, as compared to this. So I started off with the wall first of all, and I use the technique of cross hatching because cross hatching is generally much faster than normal shading. So there's a darkened wall. And now I will add some shadow at the back of this photo frame that I've added over here to show that it's actually a 3D object. And already you're getting a sort of feel that light is coming from opposite to this wall, and that's why it's the darkest bit yet. So now when it comes to the curtains, I'm just going to add sort of frills that you would while shading a curtain. And so because these flower pots are actually kept right here near the window, they're being hit by some pretty harsh sunlight. So this side here is going to be dark and it's going to progress to light. This side here is going to be dark and it's going to progress to light. Similar thing with the flower pot, except since it's shiny, or I assume it to be made of metal, I just add these sort of textures. So that's the flower pot done. And these will also cast shadows. So here's their shadow. Okay, this is the windowsill. Because the window is open, so of course you will have a bit of darkness over here. Show that the tracks, and that's effectively one whole wall done, except for this lower bit. We'll just finish off that lower bit. And while you're in fact shading it, you can keep on adding back the detailed bits. So it becomes clear that this is in fact a drawing of some object and it's not just a lot of lines. I'm again adding back the sharpness to the plants so it becomes clear. And similarly, I'm going to be shading this flower pot over here. Just right. Shadows on this side of the flower pot on the wall. And because this is not exactly in the patch of sunlight, so I'm not going to make a harsh shadow. I'm just going to make a very soft shadow of it. Again, bookshelf, I'll add the details to it. So where there aren't any visible books, I'll just add complete darkness. And where there are books, I'll just add lines to show that there's space between the books. There's shadows over there, wherever there is space. And again, shading in the leaves of this plant. And it doesn't have to be a very slow process. It can be very quick lines, because they of course expect you to make rapid sketches. So they're not too worried about your line quality, although they have specified that it is a criteria for judgment. It's not one of the main criteria. So you can technically almost give less attention to that criteria. So that's one whole wall done in a matter of minutes. Then again, making this shadow, and because this wall is facing towards you and this wall is facing towards the light source, this will be the lightest, and then this will be the second lightest. So I'm just going to add a very, very rough shade over it. Not as dark as the first wall, but not as light as the third wall that we're going to make. So if you're confident with pencil shading, you can also use smudging, but I'm not too confident with smudging, so I'm not going to use smudging. Oh, I'm sorry. That's my dad's phone. Go ahead.
My greetings to him.
Okay, and because of the fact the light is actually coming onto this wall from the right side, I'm going to draw shadows to the left on any objects on the wall to show the 3D-ness. Again, these speakers and the TV, the clock can have shadows on this side. So that's again creating an illusion of 3D-ness in them. And of course, since this is a TV and the TV is off for now, I'm just going to color it a darker shade, but also at the same time give it a little bit of a gloss effect if possible. And I'm using hatching, cross hatching. And at this point, I'm sort of losing the sharpness of my pencil. So instead of sharpening that pencil, I'm just going to skip to another shading pencil. I just feel that's quicker. Right, and again, darkness in the bottom part of this TV table. I haven't drawn anything that's kept over there, but that's just to give an idea. And since this patch of light, as I had drawn, comes from here to here and extends a little bit over here, I am going to leave this little bit over here light, and I'm just going to add some rough shading into the other bits of the table, shadows for the door knobs and the drawer knobs actually. And since the light is actually entering over here, I'm going to drop the light over here. The shadow of the TV table below it. That's almost done for that wall. I'm going to return back to this wall if I feel that I've missed out on something. And then this is the last wall. So again, shadow of the TV table on the wall. Shadow of this sound bar thing that I kept on that wall. And this really doesn't need to have too much shading. I'm just going to smudge a little bit over here just to give it some sort of a color. Uh, okay, and again, window sills. So it's going to be a bit darker because it's not facing the light source. This is going to be a bit dark, but it's not going to be too dark because again, there is another light source right behind it, as that is after all a window. So there's light coming from the outside as well. And that's really not too much to do over there. Just add back in details that you may lose while sketching over and over all of these things. So I'm just adding all of those details back, such as the sliding doors. Okay, and then I'm gonna fill into the cat right now. So I'm gonna assume it's not a dark colored cat, but it's not a light colored cat either. So just a little bit of shading on the bottom to emphasize the shape that the cat has actually a cylindrical sort of body. The ears, tail, and of course, since it's sitting in the sunlight, I'm going to draw a little bit of its shadow, just extending, and that's the cat's shadow done. Then after that, I am going to add a bit of detail to this carpet that we drew. Add a bit of frills to the end. The cat sitting right on the edge of the carpet. Yep. Okay, that's one side of the carpet. And that is the other side. And while doing this, it's better to keep a little bit of eye on that point of perspective or keep an idea where that point of perspective was. So right over here, is it stuck again?
Yeah, it's done.
Um, are you there?
Better. Your laptop. Yeah.
Okay, I think I got disconnected then.
No problem. No
Yeah,
problem.
that was my net connection. Yeah, and so where did I record till? I think it was until the carpet. Okay, yeah. So I'm just gonna add some shading to this center table thing over here because this the inside is hollow. I'm gonna add shadows wherever there is less chance of light actually hitting it. Okay, and now the last and final bit, other than doing all of these details, is to add in some darkness to wherever the sunlight, wherever the shape of the window is not giving any sunlight. So this is all the dark areas, even on the mat. Cat is sitting partially in sunlight right now. I'm just gonna shade the upper portion a bit. And so this one goes over here like this. Then it carries up to this table, moves down, and this is the other side of it. So this is the carpet. The shadow still hitting most of these areas, but okay. So that already looks a bit like there's a stream of light coming over there. And so shading the armrest of this sofa because it's not facing towards any light source. Again, shading the backrest. All of those faces that I think require shading. Uh, because again, this is mainly based not on some sort of uh, rectifiable ability, by which I mean something that you're supposed to by heart, but something that is actually based on observation. So can you not observe what looks realistic and what does not? There's another shadow added to this side of the sofa, and yeah, I think so. Other than of course, the hands, the armrests, um, the coffee mug, and the newspaper, almost everything in the room is done. So I'm just going to add some shadow to this coffee mug, to the newspaper, the bottom of the newspaper to show that's the object. Then to this coffee mug as well, because it's a shiny object. I shaded in a very peculiar way. I think people who attend BRDS will know what sort of way with the textures. And this is the shadow of the coffee mug. Again, a very soft shadow because direct sunlight is not hitting it. And just to show some heat coming from the coffee, you can draw a little bit of that. It does look a bit fake. Of course, you don't see that in real life, but it doesn't matter in the exam. Again, this is just adding final shadows to the fact that there's someone sitting on this sofa. And shadows to your leg. And that's main shadows done. I'm just going to add a bit of gloss to the top of this center table and emphasize that it's cylindrical in shape. And that's almost practically done. Oh, of course, the fan top. Can't forget everything. So again, a very rough shading. Doesn't need to be too detailed. And funny thing is, after I'd come out of the exam, I thought that my shading didn't go well at all during the exam because it was very rudimentary. I was expecting them to give me pretty low marks for my drawing because of that. But surprisingly and thankfully, they don't consider shading to be uh, too large of a criteria for giving marks. So that's good. And yeah, that's about it. If you want to emphasize that this is actually an apartment or anything, you can draw buildings on the outside, which is what I had done in the last few dying moments of my drawing, just to show that, okay, this is an apartment or something. Add a bit of shading to that. And again, similar thing over here, surrounding buildings. Doesn't need to be the case, but I just did that in the exam. And that was a sort of similar thing that my drawing looked like,
Like,
somewhat similar to this.
wow. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Very well done, Siddharth. It's
Thank you. Thank you so much.
looks like
It went pretty long. I've kept you held up for pretty long there with this drawing.
that is fine. That is fine. It's worth it. Um, Definitely makes sense. How did they get 57.5 from the entire from
Yeah. I guess, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to expect what they can give you in the drawing section
course. Of
because
course.
you can't predict what the examiner's mood
And
is going to be
because
like.
also just to add this particular question, this particular solution, and this
Yeah.
particular mark set is as per your this thing, but all the other students, for example, let's say rank number two, he or she would have also drawn something which is not like this, but from a complete different
Yeah.
place and everything, and that's interesting. I think that's the beautiful part about the entire design and drawing section that yeah, theory all you can, there is a right answer and you can fetch maximum number of marks, but drawing is something
Yeah.
which is just out in the open, and
Yeah.
very interesting to come across your perspective of this entire thing and to look into it.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this, thank you for filming it out. Very
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for having me over for this, for allowing me to actually just, sort of tell my experience about the exam. It was pretty good it was good to actually be able to know that maybe somebody somewhere is going to look at this and
oh yeah,
probably succeed in the exam. Hopefully, and fingers crossed that another BRDS student is going to succeed in this exam. And yeah, and that's the secret to success really is to just constantly practice so that you don't have a big load of work to do in the end. That helped me. And yeah, even if you don't crack it in the first attempt, there's no worries about that. There's so many other colleges, as we did clarify earlier on. And if you do, in fact, let's hope so. If you do, in fact, qualify any of these exams and you get a very, very amazing rank, which allows you to pursue your dream, then just another thing, don't let go of everything else. Give all the exams with an equal vigor, and yeah, nothing else. Just keep on doing, and I hope I hope that everyone can be motivated to become good designers for India's future from now on.
bless this, God bless this country, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I see it's grown pretty dark outside over there, the windows.
I know.
Yeah, it's been pretty long.
Sometimes it looks like a from a TV newsroom, and I'm on
Yeah,
the call from the head office, so we have a very
yeah,
it's a nice place. It's a very
yeah,
nice.
it looks pretty good. Yeah.
Get a chance to come to Ahmedabad, please visit.
Well, yeah, hopefully, maybe if I get a chance to attend an IIT Ahmedabad, I'll probably visit the BRDS center over there.